I'm Kaylee Gibbs, and this is my report on Kamiak Butte. A lot of people may ask, what even is Kamiak Butte? To start off, a butte is an isolated hill with steep sides and a flat top. Kamiak Butte is a geologic feature of the Palouse, but most famous butte in this region is Steptoe Butte. I'm assuming Kamiak Butte was chosen since it's so close to Washington State University, and we can take field trips up to the site and study it, and it is so close to us. The history of Kamiak Butte and how it got here today. About 50 million years ago, things started to change, and there are three big reasons for this formation. The first one is the movement of the tectonic plates. The coast of Washington is based on erratics and how we got shoved into the continent. The second big reason is the Columbia flood basalts. That started to happen 15 million years ago, and now it is the Yellowstone hotspot. It moved all the way from the coast of Washington all the way to where it is in Yellowstone now. What this did to the landscape was viscous basalt and magma came from deep into the mantle and surface spreading all over Washington to make scaplands. About 163,000 kilometers were covered and left 2 or 3 mile thick pieces of basalt covering the Pacific Northwest, and now is called the Yellowstone hotspot. The last reason is the Ice Age. About 2.6 million years ago, the Ice Age started to occur, and Lake Missoula was created because of this. This lake was about 300 kilometers long and about 2,000 feet deep. This changed the landscape of the Pacific Northwest for sure. An ice dam broke over 100 times in its lifetime, which tore through the panhandle of Idaho and southeastern Washington, and on the border of Oregon and Washington. One may ask, what even is the climate of Kamiak Butte? Present data we had access to while taking this course shows the climate over the years. We took data from 1895 to 2023. One notable trend in this data that we got is Kamiak has experienced all 4 natural seasons. The summer months are usually dry, and the winter months are usually packed with snow and precipitation, at least nowadays. Precipitation averagely from November to March is around 2 inches from that time, and June to August is about 1.5 inches. And the temperature from this butte ranges from 28 to 32 degrees in the winter, and then in the summer months, it's usually around 58 to 64 degrees, which seems a little low to me, but again, this is an average from 1895 to 2023. And around 21.76 inches of the precipitation per year is mostly from snow. And plants on Kamiak Butte need at least 2 days in a row of 40 degrees or higher to be able to photosynthesize, so most of the plants don't even start to bloom until mid-spring to early summer months. Kamiak Butte has 2 notable differences to it. On the north side, it is super vegetative and super wet. On the south aspect, it is very dry and being beaten down by the sun that shines on it. The north side is considered a woodland biome, and the south side is considered a shrubland biome. Starting with the north side of Kamiak Butte, how big do you ask? It is around 204.7 acres with an elevation about 2,929 feet. The vegetation present ranges from trees to shrubs and lichens. The trees here are Douglas fir, ponderosa pine, and the western larch. The coverage of these is around 72% of the landscape is covered with Douglas fir, and about 15% is a combination of both the ponderosa pine and the western larch. The Douglas fir is the most prominent here, so we took the most data on the Douglas fir. The biggest tree here was around 112 feet high with a diameter at breast height around 15.6 inches, and the smallest tree on the plot was around 80 feet tall with a diameter at breast height of 23.7 inches. And when you look up at the canopy, around 47.3% of it is covered in photosynthesizing plant material. And the shrubs and lichens on this side are extremely diverse. Just a couple of them are here with the ocean spray and the wolf lichen. And the side of the butte is extremely stable compared to the south-facing aspect for the reasons of it's moist, it's vegetative, and it is extremely dense compared to the south side. Now moving on to the south side of Kamiak Butte. This side of the butte is about 175.8 acres with an elevation of 3,206 feet. The vegetation present ranges, but is not as diverse as the north side. So here we have a lot of ponderosa pine, Douglas fir, and western larch, but most of this is covered by ponderosa pine. So the biggest one that we saw in the plot that we took was 71 feet tall with a DBH of 16.3 inches. And the smallest one we saw was 20 feet tall and had DBH of 29.1 inches. These trees are super small compared to the north side because they're fighting for more nutrients and water on this side since it's not as moist over here. About 7.4% of the canopy is covered in photosynthesizing material compared to the 47.3% on the north side. The shrubs over here are not as diverse, but the bulbous bluegrass is adapted to the area and it has shallow soils and are moist during the winter and spring months. This is their ideal environment, which is the south side of Kamiak Butte. Sagebrush is also present on this side, and it's close to Douglas fir, so therefore it resides on this side of the butte. It is very common to have sagebrush and Douglas fir occurring next to each other. And a fun fact about this is you cannot touch or eat this because it can be poisonous to humans. But on this side of the butte, disturbance is higher than normal. It is super dry over here. Plants continually fight for nutrients and water, and it cannot support as much vegetation and life on this side of the butte compared to the north side. Now moving on to wildlife and recreation. Hundreds of species do reside this butte, even though it is kind of small. But a couple of them that do reside here are the mule deer and the white-tailed deer. The deer have competition for space and food inhabiting the butte simultaneously during some parts of the year. But the difference between these two is the white-tailed deer, you can see their white little tail, and the mule-tailed deer have a little black spot on the end of their tail, and that's how you can tell the two apart. Because these do reside on the same time, so if you do see them, just look for that. But some birds that also reside here are the nutcracker, the vesper sparrow, and the mountain chickadee, and so many more birds. And recreation is a super important a part of the butte because it keeps it natural and flourishing. Recreation is important because people hike here a lot, and a lot of people use that for their mental health since a lot of places in the Palouse don't have recreation. But it is super important to keep it very clean and flourishing here so we can still keep it a part of our natural habitat. Abies grantis resides on Kamiak Butte, and I did a little deep dive into it. So it is a native plant to the Pacific Northwest, and it is native to most coastal and bottomlands and alpine slopes from sea level to about 6,000 feet in elevation. But very little inhabit the butte, and they are a necessary part of the ecosystem, though. They do support a plant called mallow ninebark, and it is normally around Abies grantis. Another thing that happens is that animals are supported by this species as well. This species is extremely dense in branches and needles. So it is super nice to support the animals with shade, and it is easy for birds to nest in as well. And also, Abies grantis is used as Christmas trees. So your Christmas tree is an Abies grantis. And on this slide are all of my references for all of this. Thank you for listening.